What's up, y'all? I'm back. So recently, I went to go watch Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, and yeah, so I wanted to talk about it today because I think it's one of the more underrated films that's come out this year so far, and has gotten a lot of unjust hate. Really, when it comes to action films, Mission Impossible is a film series really that I don't think I ever really show enough love. And mainly because I like Jurassic Park a lot. I mean, heck, look at my channel name. It's based off Jurassic Park. So I figured, yeah, I like Mission Impossible too, and so I wanted to talk about this. So I hope you enjoy this video, as I'll be looking at some points I've seen online as well as my own personal thoughts on the movie. So without further ado, hope you enjoy this review of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I think there's a real stigma in Hollywood that no new movie can be any good, and that every movie needs to redefine the landscape of film. And I think that's a really weird thing. In fact, I'm even going to be talking about that concept of redefining the landscape of film and every film needing to be a masterpiece in critics' eyes in a future video on Jurassic World. Look for that in June. However, with Mission Impossible today that I'm talking about, I really am making this because I've seen a lot of people taking a ton of dumps on this film and just saying that's garbage for really what feels like no apparent reason. Um, and yeah, today I wanted to talk about why this film is probably better than you've been hearing about online, and why I think it's worth seeing. If at least if you're a Mission Impossible fan, heck, even if you're a movie fan. So yeah, I'm gonna get into the story, and this spoiler alert for any of you watching, because this is gonna be obviously spoilers because the film has only been out a couple weeks at this point, at least to my knowledge. And so yeah, you can skip forward like a minute or two. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the plot, and yeah, let's get into it. So the storyline of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning goes something like this. Essentially, this is taking place after the last movie in the film, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, and this was originally supposed to be called Dead Reckoning Part 2. However, I guess they've just changed the names up on us and just made the original just Dead Reckoning. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But the main story here is following up with that AI called the Entity, where essentially it's just influencing everybody in the world. And like any evil AI in stories, it wants to kill everybody. So it's trying to take over all the missiles on Earth. And as the story progresses, each of the four remaining large countries in the world, if I remember correctly, it was China, America, Britain, and someone else. I think it was Canada, maybe. I think it was Canada. All lose their missile systems, and America is the last one to still have theirs. And so, and because they're the strongest, and the AI wants to have 100% certainty that it will be successful in its attack and that nobody can fight back against it, and needs all the missile silos in the world. And so essentially, the film is basically just Ethan Hunt trying to use a kill code made by Luther to destroy the entity. And the idea is they got to find this code in a sub. They have all sorts of stunts, and there's this guy named Gabriel trying to stop them. And yeah, it gets a little convoluted sometimes, but in general, I think it's pretty easy to follow for the average moviegoer. Even if you don't, if you've never seen the first film, it's actually got some pretty decent explanation as to why we're doing what we're doing in the film. And yeah, so I thought it was a good story. And yeah, now that I've summed that up, let's talk about what's good and what's bad about this movie. So after I get back from a movie and I'm about to review it, I usually try and see what other people are saying about it and see what the general consensus is and whether or not I agree with it. Because I don't know, it's just something I like doing. And I saw a video by the Critical Drinker, which, by the way, great channel. I'm not saying anything bad about to say anything terrible about him, but I did disagree with his video on the movie, which he made about a week ago as the recording this video, maybe a little longer. Either way, he makes great content. Go subscribe to him. But yeah, watch his videos after this one. But yeah, he made a video on this where he mainly critiqued it for being bloated and fragmented in its storyline for one, and having way too long exposition dumps. And this is kind of something I saw in a lot of other people's opinions, but the Critical Drinker really hammered home on this. And I kind of wanted to talk about this and why I think the film is actually a lot better than these critiques people make about it are. And so yeah, first off, to get these two out of the way, the bloated and fragmented storyline. This is about a 3-hour movie. This is a super long movie. It's over 2.5 hours. I don't think it exactly cracks the 3 minute mark, but I went to see it at like 6:30, I think, about sometime last weekend, and it just it didn't end until I think like 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock. It was a really long movie. I might be doing some bad math there, but it was a really long movie, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Heck, look at Avengers. Everybody used to love those movies, and those movies were easily over 2 hours apiece. And I don't think that every 3-hour movie is just some long, horrible, exposition dump that's bloated. And while I can see where this is said, I don't think this is nearly as bad as it's being made out, especially by a lot of people. Where they're just talking about how the film is so bloated that it's hard to follow. I don't think that's the case because I think the film is very coherent in how it goes around places. It just goes from A to B, having Ethan Hunt solve, get things done, get tasks done, trying to stop the entity. It feels very realistic to how it would be if this was an actual situation. Not that I know anything about spies or any of that, but it feels like how that something would go, and it's a lot like a lot of the other Mission Impossible movies. You can make this critique about some of the other ones that are pretty long. Heck, Dead Reckoning, everybody loved that one. Even the Critical Drinker, who I've been using as an example, he loved that one. And that one, in my opinion, had the same sort of bloated length. But, honestly, I can see where people say that. I just don't see why that's a critique. But especially considering that the second problem that I've heard brought up, especially with the Critical Drinker, was the exposition dumps being far too long. And personally, I don't think that's a bad thing. Um, some films don't need the exposition dump, but when you got a series that's had at least, I believe this is the seventh movie in the series, and you have 6 movies previous, you got to cover a lot of ground, especially considering that many people that are coming back to the franchise probably haven't seen a lot of these films. I mean, sure, if you've seen Dead Reckoning, you probably have a good idea of what happened last film, but there's a lot, they really dig back into a lot of the previous films. I think they even go back to MI3 with the rabbit's foot. I think that was MI3 and how that thing because they never specified what that thing was, and they eventually just say in this movie that oh yeah, it's actually the AI is what you were stealing, and they connected. And I've heard some people critique that. However, I don't think that's a bad. I don't think that's a terrible thing. I think there's a lot worse plot contrivances that you could make and retcons that you could make. Um, but in general, I didn't think that the exposition was bad. I think it was enough to where you could understand. In fact, considering for me who hasn't watched a lot of these films in years, I really didn't. I haven't watched these since probably the late 2010s when I had a huge Mission Impossible kick. But it's been at least 5 or 6 years since all that happened, and I just really don't have any involvement with these films until just recently when I saw the new one, other than Dead Reckoning. Um, Really, I don't even remember seeing Dead Reckoning, if I'm being honest, but I remember the story of it. But either way, I think the exposition dumps were good, and they did what they needed to get people to understand. Because, like I said, most people who are watching this may not have watched all of the original films. There's a lot of them to watch. Now, in my opinion, let's talk about the good first, the pros that I got from this. First off, the stunts are incredibly impressive. I mean, Tom Cruise, I believe he's 62 at this point, and he's pulling off some crazy stunts. And all of these, like he usually does, are done by himself, which I think is incredibly impressive. Even if you're just coming to this to see the stunts, it's well worth the price of admission. I mean, the airplane stunt. Sorry, stumbling over my words there. The airplane stunt with the biplanes, where he's just trying to jump from his plane to the next guy's plane, Gabriel's, is a very impressive scene, and it's honestly a selling point to go see this movie, or at least buy it on DVD when it comes out, or even see it on streaming services. I think it's worth it just for that scene alone. But not only that, but I think the story is pretty gripping. As I said earlier, when people saying that this film is pretty bloated, I don't think that's the case because the story really does have a way of keeping you invested. Sure, at the beginning it's a little broken up and kind of a little confusing to start, but it does smooth itself out in the middle, the second to third acts, I think. At least the way I was seeing it. And it really does keep you invested. I was I was in my seat. I was gripped to my seat the entire time. It was honestly a great flick, especially this the what you call it, the submarine scene. And that turns me into my final point of the pros for this film, and that's many of these scenes really read in a what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? They reinforce or I guess bring back memories of a lot of older classic scenes from Mission Impossible. That kind of feel, like high stakes, just great action. And that submarine scene, in my opinion, where he's recovering the data tape, or I guess it's the source code, is what they called it. Yeah, I believe it was source code for the AI. Where Ethan's just going through the submarine, no talking at all. I think it's like 20 minutes of him just going through the submarine, no talking, which sounds boring to start with, right? I'm sorry, there's an airplane on right now. I'm sorry about that. But anyways, back to my point. Many scenes with, like I was saying, with the submarine, where it's just no talking for 20 minutes, and he's just going through the submarine. It really does bring back a lot of those memories of the first Mission Impossible, even where he's trying to scale down into the computer room, uh, and he's being lowered down on wires, and how tense that scene was. And while it wasn't as long as the submarine scene, I think it's still the submarine scene is one of those examples of a really great scene that holds true to the classic Mission Impossible fashion with how they used to do their scenes. And I think it really is I think it is great. So yeah. But of course, with this film, not every film can be great. It can be awesome. So yeah, of course there are some problems, and to me, there's really three problems. There's not really three. I should say there's really one problem with three parts, or at least a couple parts, and that is the AI. The AI, in my opinion, is the biggest problem with the movie. And sure, you could say a lot of these critiques could be made towards other AI in film, like even Skynet. You could say some of these for. Not that Skynet's not still a cool villain, but really the cons in this film with the AI is really the fact that the AI is just cliche for one. Its motivations don't make any sense, and they really don't set up any motivations for it. And I might have missed something in my look through of the Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning plot. I might have missed something through that. Maybe I should have just seen more of the movie. But they really didn't set any real motivations for the AI. Still don't know why this thing wants to kill everybody. It wants to wage war. Like, what does it get out of that? Um, and yeah, it's also just cliche and that it wants to kill everybody. It's not really a new idea. I mean, we've seen this done before. Like I said with Skynet. And it not really making sense why they want to. Like with Skynet, for example, you could make that argument that why would it want to kill everybody if it's just going to be alone and when it kills everybody. And I think that's even how some of the comics play out. But I'm getting off on a tangent with that. I think in general the AI is just not a well developed part of the story. And heck, they only even have it commune with the character once, with Ethan Hunt, I should say, where he just it's talk where the AI talks to him with, like multiple different voices in this like weird sequence where he's in like some like box. I don't know. It's kind of trippy and weird. But I just really don't. The AI just was really not a selling point to me, and that's the biggest problem overall. If the AI had been better, I think this probably would have been at least a solid 9 out of 10 movie. But as it is, I think it's about a 7.5 to 8 out of 10. So yeah, with all those points made, let's wrap it up. What's the final verdict? For me personally, I thought it was a fantastic movie. It gets an 8 out of 10 from me. Um, or really about an 80% because I think I've been using percentages for my movie reviews so far. So we'll keep consistent with that. I'd say about a 8 out of 10, 80%, whatever you really want to go with. That's what I'd give it. And I think a lot of people are not going to agree with me on that because they think it's kind of just a cliche film. I mean, like I said, a lot of people don't like how long the story is and that there's a lot of exposition dumps. But I think that those aren't really big problems that bring the film down and make it a bad movie. Certainly, this is a film that I think is a pretty good send off for Ethan Hunt. If this is to be the last Mission Impossible, which who knows if it makes enough money, this thing makes $1 billion. I guarantee they'll probably find a way to make another one or make some sort of prequel or something. But as it is, I don't think that they're going to ever I don't think they're going to need to do that. Because I mean, again, Tom Cruise is like 62. I mean, he's only got so many more stunts left in him before he's retired. So yeah, I think this is a great movie. It's an 8 out of 10 for me, honestly, and I think you should go see it. I would recommend it, especially if you love action movies. It's one of the best action movies to come out recently. I mean, other than The Fall Guy last year, which another fantastic movie, you should watch it if you get the chance. This is probably one of the best action films of the year so far, and I'll be curious to see what tops it. There probably will be something that tops it, but this is a pretty good action film. Solid 8 out of 10, 80% from me. I'd watch it. So I want to thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in my next review or gameplay or whatever else I upload.